Ambassador Kai Thorne adjusted his diplomatic uniform for the 100th time as the transport shuttle descended through the crystalline atmosphere of Ethera Prime. 23 years of diplomatic service across 17 different worlds, and he'd never felt this nervous. The Lyari weren't just another alien species. They were the key to humanity's future in the galactic community. "Remember, Ambassador," came the voice of his cultural advisor through the comm. "The Lyari value honesty above all else. They can sense emotional deception through their empathic abilities. Be genuine, be respectful, and whatever you do, don't take anything personally." Kai nodded, though no one could see him in the shuttle's cramped cabin. He'd memorized every briefing document, every cultural note, every diplomatic protocol. The Lyari were described as highly evolved, peaceful, and possessed of remarkable telepathic gifts. They lived in harmony with their crystalline environment, their cities grown rather than built. Most importantly, they controlled the richest deposits of quantum crystals in this sector of the galaxy. Crystals humanity desperately needed for faster-than-light travel. The shuttle touched down on a platform that seemed to be carved from a single enormous crystal, its faceted surface catching and refracting the light of Ethera's twin suns. As Kai stepped out, his breath caught. The city before him was breathtaking. Towering spires of living crystal that hummed with an almost musical resonance, their surfaces shifting through spectrums of color he didn't even have names for. A guide, humanoid, but clearly Lyari with their distinctive pearl-white skin and large luminous eyes, led him through winding corridors. The walls themselves seemed alive, pulsing gently with bioluminescent patterns. Kai tried to calm his racing heart as they approached what his briefings had described as the formal greeting chamber. "Ambassador Veila awaits you within," the guide said, their voice carrying an odd harmonic quality. "She is eager to begin the cultural exchange." Kai straightened his shoulders, ran through his prepared opening remarks one final time, and stepped through the crystalline archway. He froze. Ambassador Veila stood in the center of the chamber, her back to him as she gazed out through a massive crystal window at the city beyond. She was tall, elegant, with the characteristic pearl-white skin of her species and hair that shifted between silver and pale blue in the light. She was also completely, utterly naked. Kai's mind went blank. Every diplomatic protocol, every carefully rehearsed greeting, every piece of cultural preparation fled his consciousness. He stood there, mouth slightly open, staring at the graceful curves of her form, the way the crystal light played across her skin, the casual confidence with which she held herself. She turned then, and Kai's face flamed red as he quickly averted his eyes, focusing intently on the floor's intricate crystal patterns. "Ambassador Thorne," she said, and her voice was like music, warm and welcoming. "I am Veila. Welcome to Ethera Prime." Kai cleared, his throat still staring at the floor. "Ambassador Veila, I thank you for... it's an honor to..." He trailed off, completely at a loss. There was a moment of silence and then something that might have been gentle amusement in her voice. "You are distressed by my appearance?" No, not distressed, just surprised," Kai managed, still not looking up. "I wasn't aware that is, our briefings didn't mention..." "Ah." He could hear her moving closer, and he fought the urge to step backward. "You are concerned by the absence of artificial coverings. What is the human word? Clothing?" "Yes," Kai said, grateful that she understood. "In human culture, we typically..." "Cover your true selves," Veila finished, and there was genuine curiosity in her tone. "This is fascinating. You wear false skin to hide your authentic form?" "We call it modesty," Kai said weakly. "Modesty," she repeated the word as if testing its flavor. "To us, clothing would be like wearing a mask over our emotions. How can there be true presence, true connection when you hide your authentic self behind barriers?" Kai finally risked a glance up and immediately regretted it. She was standing close enough that he could see the subtle patterns of bioluminescence that traced along her skin, the way her large eyes seemed to hold depths of starlight. She was beautiful in a way that transcended species, and completely unconscious of her nudity. "I can sense your discomfort," she said gently, "but also your curiosity. You are wondering how we can be so open?" "Among other things," Kai admitted, then immediately worried he'd been too honest. But Veila smiled, the first fully human-like expression he'd seen from her. "Good. Honesty is the foundation of all meaningful connection. Perhaps during our time together, you will come to understand why we Liari believe that transparency of body reflects transparency of spirit." She gestured to a pair of crystal formations that had been shaped into something resembling chairs. "Shall we begin? I am most eager to learn about your species, Ambassador Thorn, and perhaps you might learn something about ours as well." As Kai settled carefully into his seat, trying to maintain eye contact and professional composure, he realized that every assumption he'd made about this mission had just been shattered. This wasn't going to be a standard diplomatic negotiation. This was going to be something else entirely. 3 days into his stay on Ithera Prime, Kai had developed what he privately called the Veila Protocol, a careful system of strategic eye contact, professional focus, and sheer willpower that allowed him to function during their daily diplomatic sessions. It helped that Veila seemed genuinely oblivious to his discomfort, treating their meetings with the same casual professionalism she might show to any colleague. "Your species fascinates me," Veila said as they walked through the crystal garden surrounding the diplomatic complex. The living formations hummed softly around them, responding to their presence with gentle shifts in color. "You have developed such elaborate systems to hide your authentic selves, yet you claim to value honesty in your negotiations." Kai had loosened his tie and removed his formal jacket, a small concession that had taken him 2 days to work up the courage for. "It's not about hiding," he said, pausing beside a fountain that seemed to flow upward in defiance of gravity. "It's about boundaries, respect, privacy." "Privacy?" Veila tilted her head, her silver blue hair catching the light. "Another concept that puzzles us. What is it you fear others will see?" The question hit deeper than Kai expected. He found himself actually considering it instead of giving a diplomatic non-answer. "Our flaws, I suppose, our vulnerabilities, the parts of ourselves we're not proud of. And by hiding these aspects, you believe you become more worthy of respect?" "Something like that." Veila stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "May I share something with you, Kai? A small demonstration of how we experience truth?" He nodded, though he wasn't sure what he was agreeing to. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint luminescent patterns that traced along her skin like living tattoos. "Close your eyes and simply be present. Don't think about protocols, or cultures, or differences. Just be here in this moment with me." Kai hesitated, then slowly closed his eyes. He could smell something like starlight and crystal rain, could hear the gentle harmonics of the garden around them. "Now," Veila said softly, "I'm going to share with you what I'm feeling. Not thoughts. We cannot read minds, despite what your briefings might suggest, but emotions, the truth of this moment." Warmth flooded through Kai's consciousness, not his own feelings, but something else. Curiosity, gentle amusement, and beneath it all a profound sense of loneliness. Not the sharp ache he might have expected, but something deeper, older. A sense of being set apart, of carrying responsibilities that isolated her from her own people. His eyes snapped open. You feel alone." Veila's expression shifted, surprise flickering across her features. "You understood that? Humans aren't typically so receptive to empathic sharing." "I don't know if I understood it, or just felt it." Kai found himself studying her face with new eyes. "Is that why you chose this assignment? To make contact with another species?" For the first time since he'd met her, Veila looked uncertain. "Perhaps. It is challenging to be the bridge between worlds, to translate concepts that have no equivalent in other languages, other ways of being." "Tell me about it," Kai said, and was surprised by how much he meant it. They found a bench carved from living crystal and sat together, Kai careful to maintain some distance, Veila seemingly unconscious of personal space. She spoke about the weight of representation, the fear of failing her people, the difficulty of maintaining her own identity while serving as a cultural ambassador. "And you?" she asked when she finished. "What drives Ambassador Kai Thorne to seek connection across the stars?" Kai found himself talking about his own failures, his previous missions where cultural misunderstandings had led to broken treaties and missed opportunities. He spoke about his parents' disappointment when he chose diplomacy over the family business, about the loneliness of a life spent always moving between worlds but never truly belonging to any. "I keep thinking I'll find a place where I fit," he admitted, "where I can just be myself without worrying about saying the wrong thing or offending the wrong person." "And what happens when you remove the barriers?" Veila asked gently. "When you stop performing the role of Ambassador Thorne and simply exist as Kai?" The question hung in the crystal-clear air between them. Kai realized he wasn't sure he remembered who that person was anymore. As the day's last sun began to set, painting the crystal city in shades of gold and rose, Veila stood and extended her hand to him. "Tomorrow I would like to show you something, a place where my people go to remember who they are beneath all their roles and responsibilities." Kai took her hand without thinking, then realized it was the first time they'd touched. Her skin was warm, almost fever-hot, and those bioluminescent patterns seemed to pulse brighter at the contact. "Will you trust me?" she asked. Looking into her luminous eyes, Kai found himself nodding. "Yes, I think I will." As they walked back toward the diplomatic quarters, Kai realized that somewhere between her sharing her loneliness and his admission of his own lost identity, something had shifted. The careful distance he'd maintained, the professional barriers he'd erected, they were still there, but they felt less necessary now. For the first time in years, he was curious about what might happen if he let them fall. The place Veila led him to was unlike anywhere else in the Crystal City. Hidden deep within the core of the largest spire, accessible only through passages that required them to crawl through spaces barely wide enough for their bodies, it opened into a vast spherical chamber that took Kai's breath away. "We call it the heart chamber," Veila explained, her voice echoing strangely in the space. "Here, the crystals resonate with pure emotion. They cannot be deceived or influenced by surface thoughts. Only truth can exist here." The walls pulsed with slow, rhythmic light like a massive heartbeat made visible. As they entered, the patterns shifted, responding to their presence with swirls of color that seemed to reflect something deeper than mere light. "This is where young Liari come for their first sharing," Veila continued, leading him to the center of the chamber, "where they learn to experience true emotional connection with another being." Kai felt exposed here in a way that had nothing to do with clothing. The space itself seemed to peer into his soul, and the diplomatic armor he'd worn for so many years felt flimsy and transparent. "I brought you here because yesterday, when we shared that moment in the garden, you understood something that most non-Liari never grasp." Veila turned to face him, and in the crystal light she seemed almost ethereal. "You felt the truth beneath my words." "I'm not sure I understood anything," Kai admitted. "I just felt something." "That's exactly it." She stepped closer, and he noticed she was trembling slightly. "Kai, I must tell you something, and this chamber will make any deception impossible. I have been changed by our time together." The crystal walls pulsed brighter, the colors shifting to deeper, warmer hues. Kai felt his heart racing. "Changed how?" "In my people's language there is a word, Thessarian. It means the moment when two souls recognize each other across any distance, any difference. It's not common, even among Liari. Most of us bond with those of our own kind, our own world." She paused, her luminous eyes meeting his. "I believe I'm experiencing the Thessarian with you." The crystals around them blazed with sudden light, confirming her words with an intensity that made them both shield their eyes. "I don't understand," Kai said, though part of him did, the part that had been drawn to her from that first shocking encounter. The part that looked forward to their daily meetings with an anticipation that went far beyond diplomatic duty. "It means I am falling in love with you," Veila said simply. "Despite our differences, despite the impossibility of it, despite every rational thought that tells me this connection cannot work." Kai felt the truth of her words resonate through the chamber, through his own body. The crystals were singing now, a harmony that seemed to emerge from his own chest. "Veila," he began, then stopped. In this place of absolute truth, what could he say? That it was impossible? That their species were too different? That he was supposed to be here as humanity's representative, not as a man falling for an alien? Woman who challenged everything he thought he knew about himself. Instead, he found himself stepping closer to her, close enough to see his own reflection in her large, starlit eyes. "I've been trying so hard to maintain professional distance," he said quietly, "to treat this as just another diplomatic mission. But you're right. Something has changed. Every morning I wake up thinking about seeing you. Every evening I lie awake replaying our conversations. I've never felt anything like this before." The chamber erupted in cascades of golden light, the crystals responding to their shared honesty with a symphony of color and sound. "Is this real?" Kai asked. "Or is it just the strangeness of first contact, the novelty of difference?" In response, Veila reached up and placed her hand against his cheek. Her touch was electric, sending warmth through his entire body. "Close. Your eyes," she whispered. "Let me show you." This time, when she shared her emotions with him, it wasn't just warmth and curiosity. It was depth and longing, admiration and desire, the ache of connection with someone who truly understood the loneliness of being between worlds. But more than that, it was love, pure and complex, and absolutely certain. Kai gasped, his eyes flying, open. "I feel it too," he whispered. "God help me, I feel it too." They stood there in the crystal chamber surrounded by light that pulsed with their shared truth. And Kai realized that every barrier he'd built, every professional wall he'd hidden, behind was crumbling. This woman, this being, had seen past all his carefully constructed facades to the man underneath, and somehow, impossibly, she loved what she found there. "What do we do now?" he asked. Veila smiled, and in that smile was all the warmth of twin suns. "Now we stop pretending that love follows the rules of diplomacy." She stood on her toes and kissed him, soft and sweet and electric, and the heart chamber sang around them with the music of two souls recognizing home in each other. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the crystals had settled into a steady, warm glow that seemed to embrace them both. "This changes everything," Kai said. "Yes," Veila agreed, her hand still against his face. "Everything." As they made their way back through the crystal passages, Kai felt like a different person than the one who had entered. The barriers weren't just crumbling. They were gone, dissolved by the simple truth that sometimes the most important diplomatic mission of all is the one that leads two hearts to each other across the vastness of space. The Festival of Emotional Transparency occurred only once every 3 local years, and Kai had arrived on Ethera Prime during its most sacred celebration. As Veila explained it, walking beside him through the crystal city as it prepared for the evening ceremonies, it was a time when all Liari shed not just their daily roles but any remaining barriers to authentic connection. "It's not mandatory," she assured him as they passed groups of Liari preparing decorations that seemed to shift and flow like living light. "But participation is significant. It represents a willingness to exist in complete vulnerability with your community." Kai had spent the 3 days since the heart chamber in a state of emotional freefall. The careful diplomatic protocols that had governed his life for decades felt foreign now, like clothing that no longer fit. He found himself watching Veila during their official meetings with an intensity that had nothing to do with trade negotiations, and she would catch his gaze with small smiles that made his chest tight with longing. "What does participation involve exactly?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Complete transparency, physical, emotional, spiritual. We share food, music, stories, touch. We become our most authentic selves with no barriers, no pretense. Veila stopped walking and turned to face him. I would like you to participate with me, but only if you truly wish it. This cannot be about diplomacy, Kai. This must be about you and me. The way she said his name made something warm unfurl in his chest. Over the past few days, he'd begun to understand what she meant about barriers. Every time he'd relaxed his careful control, every moment he'd allowed himself to simply be present with her, the connection between them had deepened. I want to, he said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. I want to be there with you, as myself, not as Ambassador Thorn. Veila's smile was radiant. Then tonight we'll discover who you are when all the masks fall away. As evening approached, Kai found himself in his quarters staring at his reflection in the mirror. For 23 years, his diplomatic uniform had been like armor, protection against vulnerability, against the messy complications of genuine emotion. Now, as he slowly removed each piece, he felt like he was shedding layers of identity that no longer served him. The festival grounds were in the great plaza at the heart of the Crystal City, where towering formations had been shaped into intimate gathering spaces. Soft, harmonic music seemed to emerge from the crystals themselves, creating an atmosphere of gentle celebration. Liari moved through the space with fluid grace, their bioluminescent patterns creating a living constellation under the starlight. Kai found Veila near a fountain that cascaded upward in defiance of gravity, its waters catching and refracting the light into rainbow patterns. She turned as he approached, and her expression of joy and acceptance made him feel like the most beautiful being in the galaxy. You came, she said softly. I promised I would. He stood before her, feeling more exposed and more alive than he ever had. Though I'm not sure I know what I'm doing. That's the point, she laughed, taking his hand. We discover together. She led him to where a group of Liari sat in a circle, sharing stories and songs. As they settled onto the soft, crystal ground, Veila's leg pressed against his, her warmth both comforting and electric. The Liari welcomed him with gentle curiosity, and as the evening progressed, Kai found himself sharing stories from his childhood, his dreams, his fears, things he'd never told anyone. Among humans, he found himself saying, we have this idea that showing vulnerability is weakness, that to be respected you must appear invulnerable. An elder Liari with silver patterns tracing her skin leaned forward. And how has this served you, young diplomat? Kai glanced at Veila, who was watching him with encouraging eyes. It's made me lonely, he admitted. I've spent so much time being what others needed me to be that I forgot who I actually was. The circle hummed with understanding, and several Liari reached out to touch him gently. On his shoulder, his hand, his arm. The simple acceptance of their touch, the lack of judgment, made his eyes burn with unshed tears. As the evening deepened, the gathering became more intimate. Couples and groups moved to private spaces among the crystal formations, and Veila led Kai to a secluded alcove where starlight filtered through translucent walls. Are you comfortable? She asked, settling beside him on the soft moss that grew in the crystal garden. Nervous, he admitted. But yes, comfortable. With you, I'm comfortable. Veila reached out and traced her fingers along his jaw, and he shivered at the gentle touch. You're beautiful, Kai, not just your form but your spirit. The courage it took to be here tonight to let yourself be vulnerable. That's true strength. When she kissed him, it was soft and sweet at first, but then deeper as he responded, his arms coming around her to pull her closer. Her skin was warm, under his hands those bioluminescent patterns brightening at his touch. I love you, he whispered against her lips, the words feeling both foreign and absolutely right. And I love you, she replied, her voice thick with emotion. My Thessariana, my soul's match. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies with gentle curiosity and growing passion. Veila showed him how Liari expressed love, through touch, through the sharing of breath and heartbeat, through the perfect synchronization of movement and desire. Kai, in turn, shared the human way of loving, protective and cherishing, passionate and reverent. As they lay entwined afterward, Veila's head on his chest, her fingers tracing patterns on his skin, Kai felt a completeness he'd never experienced before. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "When the festival ends, when reality returns." Veila lifted her head to look at him, her eyes serious. "Now we decide what reality we want to create together." In the distance, the Crystal City sang its night song, and Kai realized that for the first time in his life he wasn't afraid of the future. Whatever came next, they would face it as they had this night, with complete honesty, total vulnerability, and the kind of love that transcends every barrier the universe might place between two hearts. The formal signing of the Cultural Exchange Treaty took place 6 weeks after Kai's arrival on Ithera Prime, in the great crystalline amphitheater where sunlight from both stars converged in spectacular rainbow cascades. Representatives from both species gathered in their finest regalia, the humans in their formal diplomatic uniforms, the Liari in their natural state, adorned only with ceremonial jewelry that enhanced their bioluminescent patterns. Kai stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled crowd, feeling the weight of success. The quantum crystal mining rights, the technological exchanges, the cultural programs. Everything humanity had hoped for had been achieved. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt hollow. In 3 days, the transport ship would arrive, to take him back to Earth, back to his commendations and promotions and next assignment, back to a life that suddenly felt like a costume he no longer wanted to wear. "You have given us a great gift," Veila said as they walked through the crystal gardens afterward, her official duties as host finally completed, not just the treaty, but the reminder that connection is possible across any divide. They paused by their favorite fountain, the one that flowed upward toward twin suns that were now setting in a blaze of gold and crimson. Kai had grown comfortable, here over the weeks, comfortable enough that he no longer wore his formal jacket during their private moments. Comfortable enough that Veila's natural state felt normal rather than shocking. "I have to leave," he said quietly. "I know. I don't want to." Veila turned to face him, her luminous eyes serious. "What do you want, Kai? Not what duty demands, not what others expect. What do you want?" The question hung in the crystal-clear air between them. Over the past weeks, as their love had deepened and their connection had grown beyond anything he'd thought possible, Kai had avoided thinking about this moment. Now it was here, and the answer came from somewhere deeper than thought. "I want to stay with you. I want to wake up every morning knowing I'll see you, knowing we'll face whatever comes together. I want to keep learning about your people, about this incredible civilization you've built." He paused, his voice growing rough with emotion. "I want to build a life that's ours, not just mine or yours. And if I said I would come with you, leave Ithera Prime and explore the galaxy at your side?" Kai's heart leaped, then crashed as reality intruded. "Your people need you here. You're their primary cultural ambassador, their bridge to other species." "Am I?" Veila stepped closer, her hand finding his. "Or am I limiting myself by believing I can only serve them in one way?" Before Kai could respond, she led him to a secluded alcove where privacy screens shimmered in the air around them. From a hidden compartment in the crystal wall, she withdrew a small device that projected a holographic display. "I've been working on something," she said softly. "A proposal I plan to present to both our governments." The display showed star charts, trade routes, detailed cultural analyses. As Kai studied the data, his excitement grew. "A joint diplomatic corps," he breathed. "Mobile cultural ambassadors working between multiple worlds. Teams of beings from different species, serving as bridges between civilizations. Who better to help establish meaningful contact than those who have already proven that love and understanding can transcend any difference?" Kai stared at the plans, seeing not just a revolutionary approach to interstellar diplomacy, but a future where he and Veila could be together while serving something greater than themselves. "This is brilliant," he said. "But would our governments approve? There's only one way to find out." The next 3 days passed in a whirlwind of presentations, negotiations, and carefully worded proposals. To Kai's amazement, both the Human Diplomatic Corps and the Lyari Cultural Council were intrigued by the concept. The successful treaty they'd just completed served as proof that such partnerships could work. On the morning the transport ship was scheduled to arrive, Kai stood in the same crystal chamber where he'd first met Veila, but this time he wasn't alone. And he wasn't leaving. "The USS Harmony will be our first assignment," Veila said, checking the data pad that contained their new orders. "A 3-species contact situation in the Kepler sector. Challenging but not impossible for a team like us." Kai smiled, adjusting the modified uniform that blended human diplomatic styling with Lyari cultural elements, a visible symbol of their new approach. "A team like us. I like the sound of that." The bonding ceremony had taken place the previous evening, a beautiful blend of human and Lyari traditions. Veila wore a simple silver chain around her throat, her first piece of human clothing, chosen because Kai had explained how humans used jewelry to symbolize commitment. He bore a pattern of temporary bioluminescence on his hands and arms, applied by Lyari artists to match Veila's natural patterns, a sign that he had been accepted into her emotional family. "Are you ready for this?" Veila asked as they prepared to board their new ship. "A life of constant travel, new worlds, new challenges?" Kai took her hand, marveling as always at the way her patterns brightened at his touch. "I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know what I was getting ready for." As their ship lifted off from Ithera Prime, beginning their journey to their first joint assignment, Kai reflected on the strange path that had brought them here. He'd come to this world as Ambassador Thorn, armored in protocol and professional distance. He was leaving as simply Kai, partnered with the being who had taught him that true strength came not from hiding behind barriers, but from having the courage to let them fall. Through the viewport, he could see other ships in the distance, more joint diplomatic teams launching on their own missions, proof that what he and Veila had found together was growing into something that could change how species connected across the galaxy. "What are you thinking about?" Veila asked, settling beside him as the stars wheeled past. "The future," Kai said, pulling her close. "Our future." She smiled and rested her head against his shoulder, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in slow, contented waves. "Tell me what you see." "I see 2 beings who learned that love is the greatest diplomatic protocol of all," he said softly. "And I see a galaxy full of species waiting to discover what we've found." As their ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward their new life together, the last thing Kai saw through the viewport was Ithera Prime's twin suns, shining like a blessing on the love that had started with the simple courage to be vulnerable, and had grown into something that would echo across the stars.